Intertextuality in Literature. English Language Arts, Grade 10. Learning Objectives. Define intertextuality and explain the difference between explicit and implicit. List some of the ways in which an author might draw on and/or transform source material. Analyze examples of different types of allusions, explaining how they are used to create or enhance meaning. An introduction. Writers are often inspired by the works of other authors. They might be inspired by a general topic or theme, a specific character, a setting, a plot event, or even particular stylistic features. In these cases, writers might transform or adapt parts of a source text to create a new text. At other times, they might reference a specific element of another text to illustrate or enrich their own ideas. Analyzing how writers draw upon other texts can help us better understand their purpose and meaning. Defining intertextuality. Intertextuality refers to the relationship between different texts, where one text references or influences another. It is an intriguing aspect of literature that focuses on the concept that no text exists in isolation, but that all texts are interconnected, woven into a complex web of references, allusions, and inspirations drawn from one another. In this lesson, we will consider the deliberate practice of authors referencing, quoting, paraphrasing, or alluding to other source texts in order to enrich themes, enhance understanding, or create multiple layers of meaning within their work. Defining intertextuality. There are a number of ways that authors might draw upon or transform source material, through using distinctive, common, or recognizable elements of the source text to create their own unique works. This can range from direct references to subtle allusions all the way to transformative adaptations. Intertextuality relies on the reader having a wide knowledge of texts so that they can make connections between them. Through intertextuality, authors engage in a captivating dialogue with existing literature, art, history, or even popular culture, skillfully employing these connections to enrich their own writing and offer readers a multi-layered experience. Purpose. There are a number of reasons that authors might implicitly or explicitly reference source texts in their work. They might do this to enrich their message, perspective, or themes by exploring a similar idea, make connections between common values, attitudes, or issues, pay homage to literary predecessors, spark intertextual conversations, challenge a widely accepted view or to subvert a traditional idea or narrative, make a reader think and reinterpret meaning. Explicit intertextuality. Explicit intertextuality involves direct or overt references to other texts. It occurs when a specific text or source is mentioned, quoted, or paraphrased explicitly within a different text. Direct quotations. This refers to situations when a text directly quotes another text, author, or character. For example, a character in a novel may say, "To be or not to be, that is the question," which is a direct quotation from Shakespeare's Hamlet. An example in literature is the novel Moby Dick, 1851. The author Herman Melville includes a range of direct quotations in which whales are mentioned from various sources including biblical passages, Shakespeare's plays, and descriptions from scientific treatises and explorers' accounts. Another example is the poem, The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock by T.S. Eliot, which includes a direct quote from Dante Alighieri's Inferno as the epigraph to foreshadow multiple elements of the poem, such as a hellish setting, bad people who pretend to be good, and a concern for one's reputation. Allusion. Allusions are one of the most common types of intertextual reference. They are an expression designed to call something to mind without mentioning it explicitly. The word allusion comes from the Latin words allusio, meaning a play on words or game. Most allusions are based on the assumption that there is a body of knowledge shared by the author and the reader, and that therefore the reader will understand the author's reference. Allusions can be used in a straightforward manner to provide further meaning, but it can also be used in a more complex manner to make an ironic statement or to challenge or subvert an idea. Let's take a look at the 4 most common types of allusions. Religious allusion. An allusion to a religious text, story or figure. Example from the poem Nothing Gold Can Stay by Robert Frost, 1923. Then leaf subsides to leaf. So Eden sank to grief, so dawn goes down to day. Nothing gold can stay. The poem is about the fleeting nature of youth, beauty and life itself. The poet makes an allusion to the Garden of Eden, a biblical paradise described in Genesis 2-3 and Ezekiel 28 and 31 to reinforce the idea that nothing pure, precious or beautiful can last forever, and that moments of paradise or perfection are only temporary. Biblical allusions activity. The following list includes some of the most common biblical allusions in literature. Choose 2 allusions from the list. For each allusion, provide a brief summary of the Bible story it alludes to, then explain the meaning of the statement. 1. He's the Good Samaritan of our grade. 2. My footy team fought like David against Goliath. 3. The park felt like a modern-day Garden of Eden. 4. After that out-of-control weekend he returned home like the prodigal son. 5. Her offer to help me with my homework was a Judas kiss. 6. The principal wants my head on a platter. 7. He viewed other men's wives as forbidden fruit. 8. In their academic pursuit, the 2 sisters became like Cain and Abel. Mythical allusion. An allusion to a mythological story or figure. Example from the poem Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad, 1899. The 2 women knitted black wool feverishly. A cat reposed on her lap. A wart on one cheek. Guarding the door of darkness. Not many of those she looked at ever saw her again. In the novel, the protagonist Marlowe encounters 2 administration women at the company's headquarters in France. Through their description, he alludes to the fates from Greek mythology, 3 which, like women who spin, measure, and cut the thread of each human life. Through this comparison he shows his feeling that these women hold the power to determine his fate. Mythological allusions activity. The following list includes some of the most common mythical allusions in literature. Choose 2 allusions from the list. For each allusion, provide a brief summary of the myth story it alludes to, then explain the meaning of the statement. 1. I'm trying to eat healthy but ice cream is my Achilles heel. 2. The team put in a Herculean effort to win the tournament. 3. It's hot as Hades in this classroom. 4. I've been hit by Cupid's arrow. 5. He only started his business 2 months ago but he seems to have the Midas touch. 6. By going through his phone you've opened Pandora's box. 7. Her seemingly innocent offer turned out to be a Trojan horse. Literary allusion. An allusion to a literary text or character. Example from novel, Jane Eyre by Charlotte Brontë, 1847. Narrow, low, and dim, with only one little window at the far end, and looking, with its 2 rows of small black doors all shut, like a corridor in some Bluebeard's castle. In the novel, the protagonist, Jane, makes an allusion to the character of Bluebeard from a French folktale by Charles Perrault that tells the story of a murderous husband who has a locked chamber filled with the bodies of his previous wives. This creates an eerie first impression of Rochester's mansion and offers subtle foreshadowing clues about Edward Rochester's dark secret. Literary allusions activity. The following list includes some common literary allusions. Choose 2 allusions from the list. For each allusion, provide a brief summary of the work it alludes to, then explain the meaning of the statement. 1. She's such a Scrooge when it comes to splitting the bill. 2. My boss is a regular Jekyll and Hyde, I can never tell what mood he's going to be in. 3. I know everyone's chosen the easier course, but I prefer taking the road less traveled. 4. I told him to think things through, but he's got a real Icarus complex. 5. I don't trust smartphones. Big Brother is always watching us. 6. The final exam week of the year is both the best of times and the worst of times. Historical allusion. An allusion to a historical event or period. Example from the play Macbeth by William Shakespeare, 1606. Faith, here's an equivocator that could swear in both the scales against either scale, who committed treason enough for God's sake, yet could not equivocate to heaven. Oh, come in, equivocator. In this scene, a porter imagines himself as a gatekeeper to hell and uses the word equivocator to allude to the Gunpowder Plot, whereby Catholic priest Henry Garnet was executed for treason as he attempted to blow up the English Parliament and King James I in 1605. The allusion seems to serve as a warning to anyone contemplating regicide and directly foreshadows the plot of Macbeth. Historical allusions activity. The following list includes some common literary allusions. Choose 2 allusions from the list. For each allusion, provide a brief summary of the work it alludes to, then explain the meaning of the statement. 1. It's hard to resist him because he is such a Casanova. 2. I met my Waterloo in that game of chess. 3. I don't think any country could follow any of these make-believe draconian laws. 4. Her lie slowly unraveled like Watergate. 5. That kid is a genius, he might as well be the next Einstein. 6. I'm trying to get the information but I keep being stonewalled. 7. I owe $20,000 tax to Uncle Sam. 8. No wonder she won the vote, she's a regular Mother Teresa. Implicit intertextuality. Implicit intertextuality is more subtle and indirect. It refers to the presence of other texts or underlying connections without explicitly mentioning or citing them. Genre conventions. Genre conventions connect texts, even when there is no direct reference or explicit mention of another specific work. It occurs when a text evokes or alludes to certain patterns, tropes or conventions that are commonly associated with a particular genre. These implicit references rely on the audience's familiarity with them to make connections and interpret meaning. For example, the detective genre often includes a crime, a detective protagonist, a puzzle-like plot structure, and a resolution that uncovers the truth. When a new detective story follows these generic conventions, it implicitly references the great detectives of classic detective fiction, like Sherlock Holmes, without explicitly mentioning them. Genre conventions. Through implicit intertextuality, genre conventions can also be subverted or parodied. For example, a comedic film that mocks the genre of action implicitly refers to the action genre by highlighting their familiar tropes or clichés. The intertextual connection relies on the audience recognizing and understanding the genre conventions being referenced in order to appreciate the humor. Additionally, genre conventions can serve as a shared cultural reference point that allows audiences to make connections between seemingly unrelated texts. When a science fiction film includes futuristic technology, aliens, and space exploration, it implicitly references other science fiction works, creating a network of intertextual associations that contribute to the broader development and evolution of the genre. Parody. A parody is a text that imitates or mocks the style, themes or elements of another text, often with deliberate exaggeration of humorous or satirical effects. The word parody is derived from the Greek paroidia, meaning a song sung alongside another. For instance, a satirical cartoon might mimic the visual style of a famous painting while portraying a current event. Parodies are typically negative in intent as they call to attention to a writer's perceived weaknesses or a genre's overused conventions and seeks to ridicule them. However, successful parody cannot be written without a thorough appreciation of the work that it mimics, regardless of intent. Archetypes. Archetypes refer to recurring themes, motifs, or character types that are universally recognized and appear across different texts and cultures. These also evoke intertextuality through invoking associations with other texts, without explicitly mentioning them. Archetypes have built-in cultural or literary meanings that the audience recognizes, allowing them to understand the implicit reference. For example, a character who embodies the archetype of the tragic hero inevitably recalls references to other literary tragic heroes, such as Oedipus or Hamlet. This implicit reference creates depth and resonance by tapping into the collective knowledge and emotions associated with those archetypal narratives. Archetypes. Archetypal imagery or symbols can also be used implicitly to establish intertextuality. For instance, the image of a snake as a symbol of temptation or the apple as a symbol of forbidden knowledge subtly references the biblical story of Adam and Eve. Even without directly mentioning the biblical text, the implicit intertextuality through archetypes invokes the audience's knowledge and understanding of the original story. Analyzing intertextuality. 1. Read the text and identify intertextual references, either explicit or implicit. 2. Research these source texts or use your own knowledge of them to identify similarities or differences in ideas, perspectives, style, etc. that can be linked to the current text. Remember, the source text might not offer the same perspective, it might contradict or challenge it. 3. Consider the author's reason for the intertextual reference, if deliberate, or if not, consider how intertextual knowledge shapes your response. Ultimately, ask yourself, how does intertextuality impact the meaning you make from the text? To conclude, intertextuality serves as a powerful tool in an author's arsenal, allowing them to transform and build upon existing source material to create something entirely new and thought-provoking. By reading intertextually, we can examine how a text might position our response by inviting us to draw on ways of thinking we have encountered in other texts. By analyzing this fascinating aspect of literary creativity, we can gain a deeper appreciation for the interplay between texts, the multiple layers of meaning created, and the ways in which intertextuality enhances the literary landscape. Good luck on your literary journey.